It's the only thing that I ever say to young people, and it's the dumbest bit of advice, which is just to relax and say, "Oh well, there's always another day," and to have faith in yourself and say, "I did it once before, so chances are I can find it again." And to have the humility to be able to say, like, "Whoa, that was bad," but to not lose, even with all that humility, to not lose connectivity and confidence. Sometimes that's the work that I have to do with younger actors when they're standing in front of me, is just to take them by the shoulders and look them in the eyes so that they're not afraid. Because fear is really the only thing that will keep you from the truth. Self-consciousness is the only thing that will keep you from the truth.
When we talk about roles and selecting these projects, and we're of course celebrating these 5 women that you portrayed, what is the moment? Tell me about the moment when you click with a character, when you've done the research, you've kind of read through the script, and you can feel someone like Kitty in your bones.
A great question. I feel when I first read a script, I'm probably looking for the feeling of terror, of not knowing how to access someone. I kind of like that feeling of you're going to have to put your feet to the fire and figure this person out. She was so complicated and abrasive and not a very easy person, but, remorselessly truthful, super exciting. Wish I could be more like her, to be honest with you, in many ways. I feel the characters quite remote from me for quite a while, as I'm just thinking about them constantly. It is an all-consuming religion for a long time. I don't really have a process. I don't really know what the strategy is. I just get consumed by them, and they dwell in me for a very long time. And then day one of shooting, I feel like I'm useless, and I feel like I'm 10 steps behind myself, and they're slightly out of reach. And then all of a sudden, it's the costumes, it's the makeup, it's the hair, it's the set, it's the air changes in the room, and all of a sudden you are right there and you're them and you're locked in step with this person. But I think acting is the ultimate form of empathy in many ways. So as long as you just keep empathizing with this person and understanding them more and more, you suddenly are just kindred spirits. And it just takes me longer than I wish it would, but I think you get there eventually.
Do you think any part of you, I know you said you wish you could have taken some of the way she is with you. Is there any part of her that is like you now? Have you taken any of that?
I hope I'm not like her. I would like to think I'm not like Kitty. I just thought she was so exciting that kudos to her, not wanting to fit into a convenient mold, especially one of that time. That idea of not wanting to contort herself to losing her mind behind an ironing board. She was capable of so much, should have been doing incredible intellectual endeavors. And I think drove herself insane. And I understood that. I've met women like that, especially later on in life, where they look back and there's regret at not having a sort of sense of self and identity. But I mean, I think she really was this like ruthlessly honest person. And I don't know if I've taken elements of her with me. I just really admired her, I think. As much as she could be unlikable, I still admired her.
Is that the key in general for all of you, that element of both empathy and admiration? How do you find that in characters when you're looking at them? Jodie, I'll go to you first.
Well, I find it difficult not to empathize with everybody, including the ones who are unlikable, I guess, because you're looking for humanity, and every character is a part of yourself, I think. And sometimes I think maybe I thought it was so interesting listening to Emily, and always so interesting to me when I do rehearsals with actors, because I realize like, oh, everybody does everything differently. You know, we all find our way differently. We all articulate things differently. We connect differently. So I usually have a more practical approach that's almost like ritualistic, I guess. If I'm find myself connected to a character or connected to a story, I don't like to tell anyone because I don't want to ruin it. I just want it to be all mine. And it's almost like a secret I have. And then it's really an obsession. It's the beginning of an obsession. Sometimes I'm more interested in the text and in the movie and in the story than I am in the character. So I go about kind of like Frankensteining a character so that I can be interested in it. But the truth is, I just want to help tell the story. I just want to be one of 175 people that help tell the story, and I'll engineer things in order to make that happen. And I think sometimes that's because I didn't start out wanting to be an actor. I just was when I was 3, and I didn't get a choice. And my first love was books. And so I think that I approach the characters sort of the way I approach books. So I like the complexity and the fullness. This character that I play in Nyad, I think is lovable, but has a prickly side. I got lucky because I had real people. So I've only done that a couple times in my life, that I had a real person that I could say like, oh, there she is. I'm going to be just like her. And I was impressed, and I just adore her. And I felt like she deserved to be seen. And I felt that if I didn't bring her to the screen in a way, she would just go unnoticed or invisible, and she would be in the background of this achievement. And so that was definitely something that propelled me forward.
That's something that's very true of all of these women, all 5 of these women. They've lived in various ways for various reasons in various shadows. So tell me a little bit about that idea of allowing their stories to be seen. Danielle, I'll pitch that to you next.
Yes. First of all, I'm excited to be here. Amazing. I just remember being like a young girl or coming right out of, doing Orange is the New Black and watching the SAG talks, and to now be a part of the SAG talks, like my heart, no lies, kind of like because
Mine too.
like you can't believe, like, it's an incredible feat to get to this point for all 5 of us. And so I just had to acknowledge that. But for me, there are so many Sophias in the world. There are so many women that are trying so hard to be strong. And this world just continues to try to find a way to pull us down, to like make our spirits just crumble. We live in a world where women do not have even the right to say what we want to do with our bodies. We're in a world where we're fighting for equal pay. We're fighting for our children. You know what I mean? And to play someone like Sophia, who is really a radical woman who is trying to break the mold, break generational curses. That's something that I just have loved stepping into her shoes and speaking for so many women. I truly enjoyed discovering more about her because I had played her for a year on Broadway, 8 shows a week, while doing Orange is the New Black, by the way, at the same time. But I was able to like really understand and get to like just dissect who she was, get into the details of who she was, find her voice where that lived. She's like a horn, when she's coming. All my life, it's just where it comes from the ground. I got to figure out where she walks from, her fist, she's a fighter, you know what I mean? And even like as corny as like, what color is she? She's like brown, she's rooted, she's strong, she's like the earth. But also like understanding when somebody is like a tree it's going to take a lot of years and a lot of wind and a lot of rain, a lot of storms, to build that resilience that Sophia has. And so it's just been an honor to portray her and to learn more about myself, and how I can carry that resilience in this really hard and difficult industry that we work in. I feel like she's helped me to like stand 10 toes down and like know that there's a place for me, and that when I feel like I'm gonna fall, I can get back up. So
I mean, that is the experience of the actor, but also the experience, as you said, of people. Penelope, what was that for you?
Well, you were talking about empathy, and for me, it's probably what gives me the biggest amount of happiness in my job is the fact that it makes your empathy and your compassion bigger, because it's the only way to connect to all your characters and not judge them. And for me, the moment of the click that you were talking about, I always talk about that because you never know if it's going to happen. I cannot say it happens in every movie. Sometimes you're waiting for the click for months and it's never going to happen.
Right.
That being is going to be there in some limbo and you are in a different frequency, and it's not going to happen. And it's the most terrifying thing for me. But when it happens, it's like, okay, I'm still lost, but at least somewhere in my system, on a cellular level, there is a connection that I understand beyond my mind. It's in a different place. And from there, I will still have fear, but I can build something from there. And with her, with Laura Ferrari, for me, I have to say it was like doing some of the research I had prepared for months at home, the dialect coach and the accent, and reading about her. And it's a real character, but there was like not very much known about her, and everything obviously about Enzo, her husband. So when I went to Modena with Michael Mann, and he knew like all the people that I was supposed to meet, the people that knew her, and it was actually the moment I decided to go on the street and talk to strangers and go to restaurants and go to the market where she used to shop and ask them about this woman. And I saw their resistance. They didn't want her story to be told. Still today, it was uncomfortable. And because she did a lot for this company, she was actually one of the first investors in the company. And all of this was known, but only for the people there or the people related to the factory or to the family. So I saw such a lack of compassion for her, for a woman that lost her son when he was 20 out of an illness, a woman that was lied by everyone around because her husband had a different wife, another son. Everyone knew except for her and a couple other people. And that was the click for me. The necessity to play her, it became like, oh, it's not just one more movie. When something like that happens with a character, it's like, you're giving voice to a woman that represents something that is important because represents so many women around the world in similar situations still today, that they don't have a voice. And people are, I don't want to generalize, but at least what I saw with her, comfortable with her story being unknown and hidden. And it just broke my heart because she had such a hard life. And all they said to me was she was difficult, she was crazy, everyone was scared of her. And when I went into the real apartment, and I believe that energies keep places keep the energy of the people that have lived there. I really believe in that. And I walked in and I started crying and looked at Michael and, are you feeling what I'm feeling? And she was living in a deep depression for so many years, and there was zero compassion. So that was the click for me to say, I feel so lucky that I can give a voice to this woman that had zero.
Well, Emily, I have to give you a little bit of a break here in this moment because we actually have to let you go get back to work. But
Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you and congratulations, and also just how much we enjoyed watching Kitty. I like to say that she is actually she's simmering within the film throughout. She's the other bomb, if you will.
Mother
Thank you
bond.
guys so much. It's such a pleasure, girls, and I can't wait to see you. And you know, with all gussied up, but I'm just honored to be in this gang with you. It's the coolest.
You too, Emily. Big kiss.
I
Bye, girls. I see you soon.
Divine, I know that you and I have talked a bit about that idea of Mary representing women whose stories are often not told. What has that experience been like?
It's I think that I became aware when I decided to do this for a living that this was part of my purpose. And I say that beyond like I was destined to be an actor. No, 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 no. I think that we as creatives, in particular in this art form, are healers. And when Penelope is talking about the energy, it's very spiritual for me. It feels like this energy, the spirit, is progressively transferring onto us more and more and more, right? And I feel like we all have experiences when we're on set where there's some days where we feel like, woof, she is right here with us. And then there's some days where it's like, maybe she's in the room, she's not right here, but she's in the room. And I think that's okay. It's like if you were to play a real character in the sense of, I like this idea of you bring forth the essence of that character. I also think that it is our job. And there's a reason why there is then a living vessel that's combined with it to add in their essence, because humanity is universal. And so what I think is beautiful about that is that no matter what I look like or any of us look like, through the healing, no matter who the character is that we're portraying, the fundamental values, struggles, people can connect to, right? So that I can watch Ferrari, and though that woman is who she is, I can connect essence of me and her. And the same thing for Nyad, and the same thing for Color Purple and Oppenheimer. And that, I think, is the beautiful part of the ministry, truly, of what we do, because there's a lot of people in this world where I think like self-help and stuff, it's newer, right? I feel like we're getting back to it, but it's newer. But I have experienced, and I'm sure you guys have as well, where people will come up and it's not like, oh, I loved your movie. It's, this reminded me of this person in my life, where this encouraged me to re-engage in a strange relationship with so-and-so because I've been holding on to something, but because of what you did and what I saw, this change happened. That's powerful. And that's what I'm, in a weird way, addicted to and keep coming back more for. So when I choose the roles that I choose, I'm so specific on it, because if I'm going to, listen, it's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice for all of us. In especially, I think I can say with confidence, especially the women in this room. We're here in this room for a reason, and the amount of devotion that we gave to this character to bring her to life is a sacrifice from our own lives. And so it's like, if we're going to do it, then it has to matter. And so in the roles that I pick, I make sure it has to matter, because I realize that in the privacy of someone's own space, one of my favorite things to do on a plane is to watch people watching movies. And there's something about a plane, you know, because you're like, you're not going anywhere. It's very quiet. They have really good, headphones where it's like deafening. You can't hear anything else. And to see people go on this emotional ride, it always brings me such joy, because I realize what we're doing is so impactful. Even if it's a silly, fun comedy, it doesn't matter. There's pathos and there's brevity and again, healing that is occurring. And I think especially in female characters, if I'm honest, because often in the writing, we're used as a mechanism of connection, emotion, in a way more so, I think, than sometimes the male characters are. And I just think that's so powerful. We're so powerful to have this ability to touch the viewer. And so, yeah, I think it kind of goes hand in hand in that way, that like in doing that, we're doing service to the role, right? We're doing service to the character, because you're right. There's a lot of women who in this world are struggling, who are behind the scenes and championing, you know, the prize with Nyad, who are in relationships and feel as though they are enough and the world around them is trying to silence them and tell them that they're not, and to dim their light with that of Color Purple, you know what I mean? Or this ferocious woman who just is, but is being called crazy and silenced. Strong women are threats. And I've just become used to it at this point, even in my own personal life. And I just don't care anymore. Do you know what I mean? I always find if someone's trying to dim your light, you're doing something right, more likely than not, right? And when men are doing something wrong, they're usually encouraged. So it's just a thing where I'm just like, this is a very powerful position to be an artist, especially at this time, because I feel like there's a reckoning of people realizing the old way is not working anymore. Catch up, right? And so what's so exciting to me about this year in particular is that across the board, all of these critically acclaimed and recognized projects have some really phenomenal storytelling, but some badass women that are just resilient in spite of their situations.
Yes. I wanted to ask you all on that idea, when is a moment that you recognized that your work matters? Jodie, I'll go to you first.
Well, I've been an actor for a long time. So I started when I was 3 years old. And I honestly thought it was kind of a dumb job, because I learned my lines, and then somebody would always say to me, be yourself, be yourself, be yourself, be natural. And it wasn't until I was 12, I did Taxi Driver. I had already worked at Scorsese, and Alice doesn't live here anymore. But once I worked with Robert De Niro, and he kind of took me through his process, which at the time just felt so eye-rolling for me as a 12-year-old. You know, he didn't talk, and he wasn't much of a conversationalist, and he just kept taking me out and running the lines. But something opened up when he walked me through improvisation and walked me a little bit through the process of uncovering his character. And I realized that I hadn't been giving it enough, that up until that year, okay, when I was 12, that it was my fault that it wasn't challenging, because I hadn't given enough of myself, or hadn't gone deep enough, that I hadn't understood the potential and the power of what the art form could be. So I remember being super excited, and I came home from this meeting with him and coming up in the elevator of the hotel to come see my mom, and sitting my mom down and saying, I just had like a revelation, and I think I might want to be an actor. So that was the moment for me.
About for you, Penelope?
For me, it's hard to, with your question, it's hard to be honest and answer, oh yes, it matters, if I think about my own work. I can't have that distance. But if I think what the work of others has meant for me, like the work of Michael Mann, the work of Meryl Streep, who I'm totally obsessed with, the work of Almodovar, whom I wanted to meet just to say thank you, because I felt he was shaping me into the woman that I wanted to be before I ever met him. When I think about these people, many of them that have inspired me so much, and it was not just about, oh, they have inspired me to to try to be an actor. No. About who I want to be in my life. For example, with Pedro, it was such a crush since I was a little girl that it was I saw him more like kind of a spiritual leader in a way, more than just a movie director, because of what happened to me every time I watched his work, and still happens to me with every one of his scripts and every one of his movies. So when I think about what others can do and what they have made me feel like, or what the work of all of you here makes me feel, it makes me feel like I love I love being a part of this so much, because there is never the day where you feel, oh, I have things under control. No, there's always fear, and always starting from zero, and I always feel like a student. And it's the work of others when it connects with something inside you that moves things inside you, even when it's uncomfortable. It is so addictive.
Well, I want to know how you all push through the fear in a second, but Danielle, I want you to share before we move to that, when you realized that your work matters.
I feel like Penelope, in a lot of ways, that where I came from, people aren't doing this. People, unfortunately, are living comfortably and complacently. And I say that with love, because that's what they want to do. They can do that. But from the small town that I come from, it was very rare that you saw people living in their purpose, in their dreams. And so when I got to see The Color Purple on Broadway, and I know I talk about it all the time, but it's my testimony and it's my story. When I saw it at 15, they gave me hope. I saw myself. They were so freaking good at what they were doing. They were moving my spirit. And I said, I have a dream now. I can do that. I want to tell a story. I want to move people. I want people's lives to change, because in that moment, my life was changing. And so I feel like there's these moments where young girls will come up to me and say, like, I believe I can do this because of you. There are moments where I will play Bernice in a piano lesson, and a white woman will come up to me and say, I relate to Bernice. I have family struggles and issues that I'm going through. Like, that to me is the most, even my family. There are so many generational curses that are being broken because of storytelling, because they see me stepping into places that they've never seen, talking about homosexuality, talking about standing firm and being strong, talking about whatever it is. There's so many things that I feel like there's just breakthroughs happening because of what we do as artists. So I just hope that, like, I can do this until I'm 95 and I need to put an earpiece in my ear to feed me the freaking lines, and I'm wearing diapers. And, like, I want to, like, keep telling stories that long, because they just make a difference.
I see this for you. I feel like we can see the vision. I mean,
see the diapers.
But it's like y'all said, it's about living in your purpose as storytellers. And that's what we all see as audience members as we watch you on screen. And I would love to just kind of hear more about not even what it is to, like, tap. Actually, yeah, I guess that is my question. I would love to know about, like, tapping into that. When you recognize that, this is more than lines on paper. Jodie, you just explained that moment that it clicked in for you at 12 years old, that this was more. Even when it's a time where, like, the character maybe isn't quite flowing, how do you still find a way to kind of tap into that purpose and make it make it more. Yeah, Jodie, since I called you out on that anyway, let's.
Gosh, everybody has their own personal way of dropping in, and their own personal way of connecting to something so it becomes purposive, psychologically to them, and then by extension to all the people it communicates to, right? I always say it's like you pull back an arrow from yourself, from your stomach, and you really hope it's going to go straight, and you hope that it's going to hit people exactly from you to them, from what your intention was to them. It doesn't always, sometimes it gets all messed up and the wind takes it or whatever, but that the idea is I want more of me to connect with more of you. So the one question I ask, really, it's the simplest thing in the world. It's the only question I ever ask is it true or is it fake? Like, those are really my only two questions. And no matter how much research I've done or, how many decisions that I've made, at some point, somebody's going to hit the clapper and you're going to say action. And all of that has to be in your body because you don't got time, that's it. It's your moment. And the only question is this true? And you just keep moving towards what's true. And wherever that leads you is the right place to go, even if it doesn't connect with others. Sometimes, even if it ends up, you don't really have anything else to rely on. So I guess that's my method. I didn't go to Juilliard, unlike Danielle. And I've just learned by being thrown in a fire, almost a cruel fire for somebody like me, because I'm not somebody who's naturally emotional on the outside, and I'm not somebody who's comfortable emotionally on the outside. So as a child, I was just thrown into a fire where people were like, feel, show, be. And if you don't do it well, it's because you can't find it. So you're going to suck unless you're true. So that's what I came up with.
What do you do when a take is fake? When you're like, I just can't get to the truth on this day. It's just not coming for me.
Yeah. I guess, it's the only thing that I ever say to young people. And it's the dumbest bit of advice, which is just to relax and say, oh, well, there's always another day. And to have faith in yourself and say, I did it once before, so chances are I can find it again. And to have the humility to be able to say like, "Whoa, that was bad." But to not lose, even with all that humility, to not lose connectivity and confidence. Sometimes that's the work that I have to do with younger actors when they're standing in front of me, is just to take them by the shoulders and look them in the eyes so that they're not afraid, because fear is really the only thing that will keep you from the truth. Self-consciousness is the only thing that will keep you from the truth.
How did the rest of y'all learn to kind of break free from those self-conscious moments and kind of push past that fear when you're heading into a take?
I think it's what Jodie's saying about just being where you are. Like, for me, I've really had to learn how to do that, because sometimes we can't plan, like, you really shouldn't be planning what the moment is going to be. You really should be living in the moment. And that, to me, allows for discovery. Like, I feel like I learned pretty on in my career, like when you have to do a scene where you're crying, to not go looking for that cry, because at the end of the day, you might find something more humane and beautiful and honest than like searching for a tear. That we've seen 100 billion, trillion times in different ways. You might find a layer of humanity that is just more honest and true. And I just find that when I'm struggling to say, how am I going to push through doing this dinner scene for the third day, when we finished on the first day? How am I going to push through this jail scene when I've been incarcerated in Orange is the New Black for 7 years, and now I'm in Color Purple in prison again? How am I going to make this different? And I just have to surrender to the story. I've done everything. I've done the work. I'm connected to my scene partner. I'm listening to the director and what he wants. Everything will fall into place. So let it go. And so I piggyback on Jodie on that one.
What about you, Davine and Penelope? How have you learned to let it go?
I don't know if you ever learned that, but I used to torture myself when I knew I had done something really, really, really bad, or I thought it was really bad. I would go home and like go in my mind through every second of it for like 100 times. It was torture. Now it's like what Danielle was saying about surrender. And that surrender has to be there. I feel like Ben Kingsley was a great master for me when I worked with him in Elegy. And he was always calm. And one day I had a very, very difficult scene, and we were both in a sofa waiting for something to work, and it was not working, and it was all this noise on the set, and I was panicking and getting so angry. And he looked at me and said, "It's okay." He didn't give me a lecture about it. It was in his eyes. Like, when you see like somebody is really practicing that every single day, every moment of the day, in every single take, of using and adapting to whatever happens and inviting that to come into the scene, and because it will help you to find some truth. And that moment for me changed something. I always tell him it was incredible every single day. He's such a master, but that moment, what a lesson, because I was too hard on myself, and it was just stopping me from being there and from finding more truth. And what you were saying about crying is so funny, because I remember in my first movie, I was 17 and I did it with Javier, with my husband, and he was 21. And we were both so obsessed with crying in some very dramatic scenes where it was not even written, but we wanted to prove that we could cry. And I remember like one time he did it and he was like screaming me, "I did it, I cried." And then another time I had one tear. I went to tell him, screaming and running, "Javier, I cried." And later, like years go by and you realize like, so what? Yeah, we have seen that 1,000 and millions of times. And in life, we all have crazy unexpected reactions. And sometimes somebody can give you the most horrible news and maybe you're not gonna do anything, or you're gonna have the most bizarre reaction. And obviously you when you are 17 or 21 and it's the beginning, the fear is not going to allow you to try to maybe do nothing, or whatever your body reacts to in that moment, no, to whatever the other person is giving you. But I remember that like we were very obsessed with the crying thing at that age.
Davine, do you remember your first cry on screen?
I don't know if it was my first, but I have bad allergies, so sometimes they work to my advantage. I'm kind of like Jodie. For me to naturally summon up, it takes a lot. And I feel uncomfortable. For me, it's almost like a nudity scene. Like I feel so vulnerable of people, and I don't know, because like I'm a woman, you know what I mean? And it's predominantly male crew, and I'm like, I don't want them, seeing me cry or whatever. I think the first tear that I like remember on camera was I was doing Empire with Taraji, and it was a two-hander. It was just me and her in prison for, she was having like flashbacks. And I remember, this is good because it was my allergies. It wasn't me really crying. So laying on my side, and she's like, we're having this, I think it was a scene where like, I got pregnant, it's Empire, so it's epic. Like the guard raped me. I had a baby. They took the baby, and Taraji's character Cookie is telling me, they took the baby, and I'm laying on the side of the bed, and I'm just listening to her, because I knew these people wanted me to cry. And I was like, I don't know how to give it to you. But they built this set in a very drafty warehouse. And I could feel the sniffles coming. And I said, is that a allergy tear about to come up? And it was, and as she's talking, it just went here and down here. And the camera guy was like, you could tell behind the thing. And I was like, use it if you can. I don't know. But when it comes to like, in school, I knew I had a difficulty with it. And I talked to my teachers about it. And so, the voice teacher was like, we can do all these exercises in your body and we can press these points on your clavicle and that'll induce. And I was like, that's not going to work for me. And for me, the thing that stuck with me was fight it. Just fight it. Fight the tears. You can't cry, don't cry. And it was, when the teacher said it, I was like, well, what's that? But I found that this was when I was younger. Now I have such, and I think we're all saying this to a certain degree, I have such a conviction and a passion for the woman that I'm portraying that I find, and that I tend to play fighters in some way, shape, or form, that it's usually in spite of itself. It can come because I'm stressed. I'm tired. Divine. You know what I mean? Like, there's sometimes things, if I'm honest, that's happening in our lives, or the frustration of I'm hungry. Everyone in crew has a hot snack and no one has offered me, do I want an apple? You know what I mean? And I'm starving and everyone's eating. Sometimes it's the frustration in the moment that comes out. But I think the biggest thing is I try to remind myself, I trick myself almost and tell myself it's rehearsals. You're just rehearsing. You're just trying out options. There's no right or wrong. And I do, for me personally, one of my favorite processes of being an actor is to really dig in the nuance. I love the dialect, the hair, I love the process of the transformation. And then when I feel like I've gotten to a certain level, I'm hands off, and kind of like what Danielle was saying of, I don't predetermine or rehearse. I like to be like almost like a raging bull within the parameters of the fence, right? Like, let me just go all over the place, try it, a whole bunch of stuff, but like within here, as opposed to this roadmap. I don't want to act by numbers, you know what I mean? Of like where I'm supposed to go and stuff like that. But I just tell myself it's a rehearsal. And then like how I also try to create things for myself to help me feel connected. So sometimes I'll do things, especially with with Mary, the glasses that I wear are my grandmother's glasses, not her actual glasses, but I show props. These are my grandmother's glasses. I want these glasses, and I want it on this little dainty chain. I wanted like little cardigans. I wanted the shoes, the hosiery. I wanted that because that was sensory stuff that when I felt lost was going to help me get back in. Do you know what I mean? Or just to have those glasses, or I wore my grandmother's perfume so that it was like, there was this like 3 or 4D, whatever you want to say, sensory overload, always within my bubble and my sphere, so that I could try to, stay attached to her. And again, this sense of rehearsal, like try to reduce the pressure. Oh, and I don't do cameras. Like Video Village. I don't want to see, I don't look in between takes to see what I look like. That's why you.
I do. I do.
Give us both sides of the experience, y'all.
Yeah. I mean, because everybody has their own process. That's all.
Everyone has the process. Yeah. For me, when we're talking about being self-conscious, I act. I think it's a good analogy. I'm like a bull, like reckless abandonment, just like banging up all over the place. And so if that's why I hate ADR. That's why I personally ask, do not ask me to do ADR until it's done. Whether it's a TV show or a film. If you make me do ADR while I'm also filming, I become so self-conscious. I'm not looking at all this stuff that I do. I don't even like watching myself in movies and TV when it's done. I don't like watching my work because I'm afraid that like, for me, beautiful chaos and reckless abandonment, I feel like a kid, like how a kid is free. And I'm scared that if I watch it or analyze it too much, for me, I'll lose that. So I just try to keep it as judgment free as I can. It's very hard to do, but I try.
Danielle, why is it important for you to watch yourself in Video Village?
Because I feel like for me, and this is why I love talking about process, because everybody has their own. There's no right or wrong way of doing any of this. You got to do what's right for you. For me, I enjoy it because I get to get even more into the details. And I think I learned it from Orange Days, where I would try something and I actually was not giving off what I thought I was trying to give to the world. Like it wasn't not landing. And so I just found for me to be a little bit more specific and say, am I really listening to this other character? Am I really, landing a note how I want to? I like to watch. So for example, in Color Purple, I remember there was this moment. There was two moments, but I'll tell you, I'll try to make them short. So there was this one moment where the Blitz and Dan, cinematographer, were so focused on the lighting. And I was like, that's great, y'all, but there's acting element here as well. And I'm looking down when I'm doing Hell No, and I'm with my sisters in the back, I'm looking down at my mark. And they didn't catch it because they were so focused on the light and catching this beautiful light. So when I was in Village, I was looking at the takes and I said to Blitz, Blitz, I know you love this take, but brother, I need you to know that I'm looking down at my mark and all that people gonna think about is Danielle looking down at that mark. So can we do it again? So I think for me, it's just those details that I want to make sure are caught. So that might also be a little bit of like this birth of a director coming out of me. Jodie, you would say it's okay.
That's for sure.
That I feel that I have inside of me where I like to pay attention to every little thing. And so because I think that's what makes great characters is the specificity of between each line, between each frame, everything that you see adds to the story. So that's why I like to watch.
I just have to be nosy. What was the other moment?
Oh, okay. So the other moment was when right in the beginning of Hell No, when I'm walking with Fantasia, and I remember it was a wide shot, and we're just walking, and I was like, but I'm not showing who Sophia is by just walking. So because I went back and watched what he was capturing, I was able to do another take where I kicked the sand, when I kicked the dirt, because that was me showing or expressing the frustration that Sophia was having in that moment. So I was just like, to me, I always go back and watch the beginning of Hell No, not always, but whenever I watch it, the beginning of Hell No, and me kicking that dirt, because that is a representation of this strong woman trying to teach Celie to fight for herself. But if I'm just walking, what we doing here? We just walking? So that's why I like watching, the details for the details.
Jodie, to what Danielle just said, was that in some ways your birth as a director as well, realizing you kind of wanted to get into those details? Did you watch yourself grow? Like, at what point did you start to watch yourself?
We didn't have video cameras then, so we didn't have a video village. That didn't happen until I was probably 30 years old. And I remember being kind of insulted when that happened, because I remember the director suddenly was no longer looking at me, and they were no longer trusting the camera operator, and asking the camera operator, how was it? Suddenly everybody was behind, and there was a kind of self-consciousness about that I remember I didn't like. I had to get used to it, but I didn't like. It is true, like, everybody has their own way of doing things, and everybody has their own way of guarding their confidence and guarding their relationship with the character and making sure that they feel loved and safe. And so we all come about that differently. I love the details, always did. I remember being, when I was, 6 or 7 years old, the first time that I had an actor director. And I'd known him because he was the dad in the show. And then suddenly he was directing the show. And I thought, well, this is mind blowing. Actors are allowed to direct. And really from that moment on, I remember thinking, like, I want to pay attention to everything that happens. For me, that was more interesting than the acting. And was how technique and the technology of things, how we bring all of those different vocabularies together, vocabulary of props, the vocabulary of costume, the vocabulary of acting, all of us come together, and we have intention, and we make these intentional decisions, even though magic happens when, somebody says action. We're always juggling. And as a director, I feel like that is the beauty of it. This idea of juggling between being aware and being in the moment. As an actor, being aware and being in the moment, allowing things to happen, having the wherewithal to make decisions ahead of time. So it is like a meditation, almost like an athlete is able to do that. And I've found that as I've gotten older, I can juggle more, but it gets easier. And maybe that's just by relaxing.
No, it's exactly like an athlete. It's about getting into the flow. Like, you have to get into the flow of a character. Penelope, what is that experience for you? How do you get into the flow and stay in the flow with your characters?
I think that's what we were saying before, like, sometimes you are and sometimes you're not. And I feel it's always about connecting with others. And sometimes it might be somebody in the crew that suddenly you realize that there is something there in the way that person is moving, on the way that maybe you notice that person is sad that day, and is kind of like magical and mysterious. But I feel like it could be with anybody that maybe has no relationship to the story or nothing similar to your character. But I feel like when you get stuck or trapped, is a lot of times you're getting trapped in your mind, like looking at yourself from the outside. And for me, the escape is always about, okay, this is not about you, this is about others. So connect with somebody else, because through someone else, you're going to find an answer, and you're going to find the connection to this character that you are playing again. It is never like I think it's very easy with the fear and the nerves to get trapped in your own mind, and that is like the worst enemy of acting. And I think it can happen so many times in a period of shooting one movie, or so many times in one day. But for me, the way out would always be remembering that it's not about me, and is something that is done for others, and that's always my savior.
I wanted to ask, I wanted to go back to something you said a moment ago, Devine, about with Mary and the glasses and the chain. Was there anything else for anybody else that was kind of that, like, I guess in the way you mentioned, like that grounding element that would bring you back to that character, but also just things that you thought just made you feel very much like who you were portraying? Danielle, I'll ask you first.
Okay. Well, for me, I hold on to pictures. So in my dressing room, there was a ton of photos of people in my family, my grandma Pearline, who had 11 children, So she was definitely a Sophia. Of Oprah playing Sophia in 1985 version as inspiration. I had pictures of Fannie Lou Hamer, who I thought was a real life Sophia. So those were things that I was able to like really hold on to when I stepped away from set, coming back into my dressing room, keeping that with me. But I do have to say, like, I remember I kept my shoes from the Color Purple Broadway version of playing Sophia, and I tried to use my shoes as this Sophia in the 2023 version, and it did not. And I realized like the shoes that I had on the Broadway version was a platform, a little bit of platform, which I felt very powerful and 10 toes down, strong woman. But this was a different Sophia. We're actually in the field now. I don't need no little hill, no platform. Put me on the ground. I need to feel the earth. And so I actually had to like let that go of trying to hold on to a different version of Sophia and allow a newness to enter into the space. And so, yeah, I really did try to hold on to what I knew her to be, but also allow for a new discovery of who she was in this version. So I tried, didn't work though.
But it's true though, because if you had held on to that version so tightly, you wouldn't have been able to allow this new version to come in, all of these years later.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a new person. I'm a mom now. I'm a wife now. There's just so many more layers to who I am that I didn't have when I was 25 that I now can, add to who Sophia is. And I think that's been the greatest gift too, is like using our life experiences that we all have done to bring these characters to life.
Penelope, what about for you with Laura?
For me, I also change perfume every time for every character, but Laura had no perfume. It was too depressed for that. And and the shoes are always very important for me, but it's not about the way they look. It's more about the way the way you're gonna move and the way you're gonna walk. And when we were rehearsing, I suddenly felt like Michael and I at the same time felt like, okay, there's something really off in the way that she walks. And we decided to put orthopedic plantillas, I don't know how you say that in English, in my shoes. And that I feel like helped me a lot. But it was like reading a lot about her, about who she was. And then I met a doctor who was their doctor for Enzo and Laura. And in the first meeting, he just told me a few things. He was just testing me. By the third meeting, he gave me love letters between the two of them, and he had the copies. And he shared those with me, and that was really important for me to understand so many details about that relationship.
Yeah, because those are the things that no one else can know about her. What do you, when you have that kind of information about somebody, how does it then affect what you wanted to portray about her?
Well, it feels like sacred because you have in your hand something that is so private, and you have access to it, and it gives you you feel even a bigger amount of responsibility. And also the fact that we were allowed to shoot in the cemetery, in the real place where Dino was, and that was really, really hard. At the same time, we felt very grateful that part of the family were trusting all of us enough, to be able to shoot in these places. But it was very emotional for me to see the respect of everyone, every single person in the crew, because we're telling a story that shooting the scene of the loss of a son is not a joke. And we shot it like in one of the first days of shooting, and there was so much that I was able to understand in those 2 hours about this woman, much more than in all the months that I had been reading about her.
Yeah. just those 2 hours of being in that space and feeling the things that she must have been feeling.
Yeah, because you feel like almost like I did actually ask for permission. I walked in there by myself first because you are kind of invading like a sacred territory, and it's not about religion. It's like it's life, and I had a moment there by myself and kind of asked for permission and try to honor them. Try to with as much truth as you can, which maybe you will be able to reach that, maybe not, but as much as you can. And once again, this is remembering that this is not about me. This is not about us. This is about somebody else, and it's for someone else. This is the beautiful thing about our profession, that in essence is supposed to be so selfless. Is that a word, or did I just invented that
Oh,
word?
that's a word.
Selfless. And it's kind of many times seems the opposite, or that we could be attracted to this profession to be on the spotlight, but it's actually the essence and the beauty of it when you connect with it, and when it really can give you real happiness, is when you're there in service of that character and that story, and you're one more piece that is needed to tell that story, and we cannot do this work alone. So that's when I fly, and when I feel like a kid again, when I'm just like one more piece of this adventure to honor other people's stories, other people's lives, and hopefully restart important debates. Like, we are all aware that movies are not going to change the world, but they have a responsibility, and they have the opportunity to make people to ask questions, to restart debates that are still things that are still like stuck on the same place. And I think this is really a blessing and a privilege about what we do. With being, I'm saying this from a very humble place. That's why I said, like, we know we're not changing the world, but there is a responsibility that comes with this, I think.
I thank you for all of your selflessness being here today, because I do think that is the exact right word. Because like Danielle mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, so many people watch these conversations in hopes that they can learn a little something to kind of open themselves up and accomplish the beautiful work that you all accomplished this year. And really, we're just celebrating this year, but it's throughout your incredible careers. And it is my pleasure and my honor to be leading this conversation. But thank you to you, Jodie, to you, Danielle, to you, Davine, to you, Penelope, and to Emily as well. And thank you all so much to the audience for watching.